was reading a book, or I started reading a book that was, let's see, what's it called? It's called How to Conceive Naturally,
Mm-hmm.
for and having a healthy pregnancy after 30. And then I've always known this, in this concept of that there's trimesters, 3 different parts of the pregnancy, but I've always known there's preconception version, in addition to postpartum. It's not just like pregnancy and that's it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I found it interesting that this book talked about the 5 different trimesters, because people are used to trimesters, so it makes sense why she does 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the first trimester is the whole preconception aspect to it, and the 5th trimester is the postpartum, post-delivery in all that sense. And so that's like the layout of the whole, pregnancy baby aspect, which made really much sense to me. What do you think?
It does make a lot of sense. The first question that came to my mind though was for the preconception trimester. How is that measured? Because for some women they could be in that phase for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. So in this book, she mentioned 3+ months. The reason why that is because there's 120 days that takes the egg to basically, form from what it is to where it's going to be before you ovulate, all these different things. But for my research, it's at least 6 months. That's usually the timing of when it's the research where it says, this is like not proven, but has some sort of research saying it does make an effect. And so for me, I do go off the 120 days. 120 days is that preliminary thing. If you have no issues, no health concerns, nothing, then to start every 120 days, just more like a marker, more as a checkpoint versus I need to be pregnant for this time, right?
Can you talk more about that? Because I never heard of the 120 days, and I don't want to say I read so many books. I read a few books, but I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, because the 120 days really goes by the aspect of blood, the red blood cells.
Mm-hmm.
The red blood cells renew every 120 days. So very similarly, each red blood cell is like a cell in our female body. So the egg cell is also a cell. And so whatever happens in your environment for the red blood cells to happen, that interferes also of how that egg basically formulates, if you that. And so the egg is not just the egg is not just what you're born with. The egg is influenced by the environment that you have. Almost like, how when people think of when there's a virus, you study the virus, you study the body, you study the thing that got infected. It's, for example, I don't know if you heard this recently, but in regards to dolphins, so there's like I think it's called a school of dolphins. I can't remember exactly what a bunch of dolphins is called.
Don't ask me.
But basically, it's just a school because of fish. I don't know.
We'll go with school.
Whoever's listening. But the school of dolphins is basically when there's one sick dolphin. What normally happens is people tend to study that dolphin, cut that dolphin open, and see what is going on, test it, and all these different things, right? But other dolphins start getting sick. And the concept is, why don't you test the water where the dolphin is staying and living to see what's going on with its environment. So very similarly, the egg is not just the egg. The egg is based upon and influenced by the environment, because you need the environment to support the food, like the seed, right, in a soil.
Right.
The seed doesn't just, come out and that's it. You need the soil, the environment, the pH, the sunshine, the air, the water, everything around it. And so when a lot of people think of, when you do a science experiment almost, right, how to put the egg and the sperm together and put it in and see how it works and what happens, the quality of that. The quality is not just because of the quality that you have in your body. A lot of people kind of forget the fact or don't research enough in that aspect, or even know. A lot of doctors don't know as well that it's not just if it's a good egg or a bad egg. It's that the test is a good test or a bad test during that time that they took the test. It's the quality that it was when it's made throughout those 120 days plus.
That's amazing. It makes so much sense too. Especially like when you were like the egg is a cell, I was like, duh, TeAirra, the egg is a cell. And because we start to think, I know for me, I would think of the egg as just this magical thing. It was there when I was born. It was just always there. We're taught that women are born with all the eggs they'll ever need in life to reproduce. And especially it's called a pod of dolphins. I Googled it while you were talking.
Did you? That's why you have Google. It's a pod of dolphins. Not as school people. School is a fish.
Like let's figure this out. But and I liked how you test the water to see how it affected, because the egg is going to be growing in that environment. So I feel like, to me, that's like a big revelation. And then that also makes me feel like it's a big key to how, and the book you said is called How to Conceive Naturally. Because I was just going to say, it feels like such a missing key to having a healthy preconception process.
Yeah.
Because you have to have your environment cultivated to care for this egg before it's even fertilized. And
so if you step a little bit deeper into that, in that aspect, it's like what's happening in the environment. Like when you talk about Reiki too, Reiki is more like the energy, like the intention, right? Because I'm not familiar with it. And so think of when you're conceiving, preconception wise, like how is your environment, your energy, your mindset, everything like that. A lot of times when you talk to other women or couples who try and conceive, they're like, they need to have a safety net, something that makes them feel safe, because that's human nature, right? Human nature is based on survival. And then if you don't feel safe, whether you feel like, am I going to be enough? And that's more like a survival instinct. It's like that survival is, if I'm not enough, then I shouldn't be producing certain things. Then I'm going to somehow kind of work against my body to do this. Creates a certain kind of energy, a certain kind of tension for that environment, and that switches certain things of pH, certain things of what's going on in your body, not providing and supporting what you need, because that means it's like fight or flight. Protect your own body first before it protects other things in general. You think of so say the egg and there's an embryo basically happening after the egg, after the sperm like basically goes through the egg, and they're like, oh, I'm together now. They basically go down from the fallopian tube, or wherever there are, and then they implant in that area in the uterus, right? And so when that happens, if your pH, if your environment is not good, it's not like where it wants to be, it's not supported, there's a certain amount of time where your hormones are basically influenced based on what you're thinking, what you're eating, what you're feeling, all these different things in the environment around you. And basically, when it's not a habitable environment, it just lets go. It's like, this is not safe. I'm going to renew and release and try a different time, because this is not the time for me.
That makes sense too.
Yeah. It's like a mind-blowing thing. It's like, it's not just a science. Science is an art.
I was going to say, I love it because it's starting to even prove, like, we have the biology part of it down. We definitely have the biology part of it down. We understand that, like you just explained, how a sperm fertilizes the egg, how it moves down the tubes, implants into the uterus, it grows for all this time. And I don't feel like we have the emotional, mental, even I would dare say spiritual side down. And I like to talk about the spiritual side because like when you said the egg is a cell, one of the things that really got me to want to focus on my spiritual health was in learning about quantum physics and how, well, even just the basics of physics, cells are mostly energy. Like what, 99.8% 0.8% energy and then the 0.2% actual physical matter, something like that. I don't know the exact numbers. That's another thing we can ask our friend Google.
I mean,
but
the cell is a certain thing, and then there's the atoms that make up the cell, and like so in the cell there's the cell wall, the stuff in the cell, and all these different things, right? And see underneath them. I remember how in biology class it's like animal cell versus plant cell.
Right, like, so are you able to break that down right now? Like, I can see the model in my head. We may have to like find a model to put up to talk about this, because I can see the model in my head. But, as a kid, I think that was the last time I really worked with cells at that level, like where we were talking about the anatomy of a cell. And so all I remember is coloring in like the membranes and the nucleus and stuff. What is all of that actually made out of?
So let's just talk about the outside of the cell. The outside of the cell is the most important in a sense, because it signals what's going on. So for example, I think we talked about the viruses the last talk we had, but basically the outside is almost as if it's like arms saying, okay, like what's this signal? It's almost like your senses, your sight, smell, and all these different things, but on the outside of the cell. And so what happens is it takes in those senses as almost like little Pac-Man. It's like, oh, I'm gonna gobble this up and see what this is and take it in. Is it something I need? Is that not ready? Let's put it back out. So it goes through that endoplasmic reticulum. I think I'm saying it wrong because I can't remember exactly what it's called. The ER basically goes through all these different things and then becomes a lysosome. Right?
You're right. The endoplasmic reticulum. I pulled up the model so I can follow.
Perfect. So it goes through certain things, takes in, kind of reads it. Do I need it? Do I not need it? Then it kind of exits out the cell. But the thing is, when it needs it, the information, the RNA, all these different things it goes through, make certain proteins for your cell to provide certain kind of food, certain kind of support, whatever is going, wherever it's going to signal. Then that's what it's for, provides that energy to do so. So if you think of the outside of the cell, it's made up of glycoproteins, made up of different all these different little Y-shaped thing that kind of signals you what's there, what's on the outside. Is it safe? Is it not safe? So what happens is, for example, the egg and the sperm, they have also the coating on the outside. What happens is, if you don't have enough support, enough coating on the outside saying this is good or bad, because the thing is, your body's so smart and so brilliant. It trusts what it needs, right? And so what happens is, if it senses for example, in an egg, if it senses a sperm that has, it has a decent sperm, I could let it in, right? Once it basically detects it, it has a certain kind of glycoprotein kind of interaction between each cell, and it kind of takes it in, and this is so brilliant. This part is where research says when the egg notices or detects that the sperm has some kind of damage in their DNA, the RNA, all these different things, then it kind of repairs it to kind of work together to become something. So that's kind of how, like, the simplest form of it, how it works. So it's so important to know how, if you're healthy, because the thing is, if you think of very simple, people look at other women, people look at other men, are they a good fit for me? Do they have certain things like, curves, or are they appealing? Are they attractive? That's our survival aspect, right? It's because in their mind, something in their head is saying this person is good because of supposedly reproductive reasons or attractiveness, whatever it is, that makes them mesh to basically have more babies. Like that's like the basis of life, right? Survival and then reproduce. So that's like the simple purpose of it biologically, but obviously as a human we have a little bit more of a need versus just the basic survival needs.
Because even when you come down to thank you for all of that. That was what I was that was what I was kind of hoping for, is for the explanation, because like even when you use the example of, is this a good sperm to let through? And then the example of the layer on the outside, the ER. I'm not even going to try to say endoplasmic reticulum. But the part that I remember that as a child, and then listening now to us talk about the environment, and then whether the environment that the egg is in, and trusting that it's a safe environment to grow. And then also even coming down to having to let in a, like you said, decent sperm. All of these things, the cell is protecting, that's what the cell membrane is protecting. And so we don't even have to get into the father side right now. If we just focus on the mother and how her making sure her environment is safe. I remember at the start of my second pregnancy, we wanted that baby girl so bad. We wanted a boy, but we wanted a second baby so bad right then. And I was under a lot of stress. I was under a lot of stress about it because I was putting my body under pressure to meet a deadline. I remember that. I remember thinking like we had to be pregnant within the next 6 months to meet our timeline for when we wanted to have this baby. And I remember being under pressure because we had a daughter already, keeping up with that. I was going to work. I was actually working at a fairly new job. And my business had just started picking up. So lots and lots of pressure. And back then I went to church, but I didn't really understand like spiritual wellness, like, and how it tied to my emotional wellness and bled into every other aspect of my life. And so, and I just think it's so interesting because the minute I became pregnant was when I let go and I stopped stressing out over the timeline. And so I'm really happy that you are presenting us with this information it's information to me and maybe confirmation for someone else. Someone else may have already heard this totally.
Good one. I like
that. But just for those who may not know about it, that 120-day period of cultivating an environment for your egg, like that sounds like an awesome challenge period, like 120-day focus of your temple, because that was the best advice I ever received around pregnancy. When I was pregnant with my oldest, we didn't tell the church for a while, and we finally told the church because we weren't married at the time. We did tell the church. My pastor told me that the best thing I could do for me and my baby was to protect my space. And she was like, I don't mean physically. She was like, when you sense that people have the wrong energy, just tune them out for a while. And she was like, I know it sounds really bad, but what's growing inside of you needs all the protection it can get, and you don't want energies to affect your baby. And you can say it's woo-woo if you want, but what I can definitely say is with my first pregnancy, I was very mindful of the energies I was around, and I was very mindful of how I was responding to things. Excuse me. I was very mindful of how I was responding to things, keeping my emotions in check. And like, I remember being very intentional about just keeping a very level, calm. I don't even want to just say happy, but I just wanted to always feel, calm and not stressed out. And with my second daughter, all of that went out the window. So much was going on, I forgot about it. Now, with them both here, 1 6, 1 3, my first daughter is so chill. I was talking to her dad about it yesterday. She's so chill, especially when you compare her to our second daughter, who gets very emotional easily. She's like, little things set her off. We've talked about her little OCD tendencies. And I went through a lot with that pregnancy with her. I was under a whole lot of stress with that pregnancy with her. So, not saying it's proof, but I do feel there is some weight to that because, and I'm not the only story I've heard like that.
There's many stories about that, right?
Yeah.
Is it like, it's like something happened and I feel like this is it? But there's actually there's research in regards to that as well, like how the mom was when they're pregnant. Because there was like basically a Rotman study. I just pulled this up.
Cool.
It's a Rotman study that was done in Austria. They had 141 pregnant women that separated into 4 different groups. So one was happy, one was unhappy, one was ambivalent. It was like kind of like, doesn't matter. The other one was like a cool set of moms. And so they assess different kinds of, they assess the babies 3 months after they're born. And so each of the babies have certain kind of, how do you say, temperament based on what happened. So there's just peer research, peer survey. And so what happened was the ones that were cool, like, I don't care, like whatever kind of moms, their babies, when they came out, they were more lethargic. They were more like non-energetic, detached, not really present, slept a lot, eating was okay, they were growing, but they were kind of checked out and from bonding because they didn't know what the baby was like up, were awake or, doing something, But it's harder, like, kind of going back, kind of seeing what's going on. Because you kind of, in a sense, what I've heard from a lot of my clients and a lot of stories I've heard that, moms and baby, they kind of play on each other to see how their energy levels are, what they're supposed to do. Because they kind of, the mom is there to provide and the baby is supposed to tell them what's going on, communicating biologically, for sound certain things. So I found that was very interesting. And the one that were ambivalent, more like uncertainty, mixed feelings kind of moms, those moms actually had a lot of babies that had GI distress, like stomach issues, behavioral problems, higher birth weights, and also, what's this thing, that their neurodevelopment of this score were lower because they just grew up in a very stressful environment. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then the ones who were unhappy, very catastrophic kind of moms, had very unhappy babies. They were low in birth weight. They're usually premature, emotionally troubled, not feeling as well, digestive issues, fussiness, higher postpartum depression as well. And kind of this is kind of, kind of makes sense why ideally you want happy moms, because happy moms make happy babies. And so that was a study that was done in Austria a little bit ago.
Moms make happy babies. I like that. I like that because I think it's just a good reminder. And who did Makosi say that she wanted to make sure that before she had a baby, like her body was ready for it. She wanted to be there. She wanted to be her best self. That's what she said before her baby came. And with this 120-day period, so even before you enter into that 120-day period, maybe that's when moms should start focusing on becoming their best self for their baby, because they have to keep the space 120 days prior to even conceiving.
Yeah, that's why I have a 5-year plan.
A 5-year plan.
That's like way more than 120 days. But sometimes you can't control what happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes the news that you get is so not as a whole picture, and you only know so much when you get the news. So it seems like it needs to be hurried. It's not a lot of time. So then, your body reacts. So say, there was, let's not say exactly a cure, but say there's a cure to X, Y, and Z. And then someone told you have X, Y, and Z. But you don't know what the cure was. But someone else did, but you didn't for the longest time, for like 10 years. So you start doing certain things that you think that you don't have enough time for, but so you kind of have this like rush, fight or flight kind of stress mode, thinking that you need it to be done because you only had a certain amount of time. But what if there was that answer somewhere else, but no one told you until 10 years later after you've done all that rushing, all that stress, right? Like, that is just a mind, like, boggling thing to think about, because we human beings, we only know so much. and you've only taken so much. And so it's interesting, right? It just blows my mind.
Yeah. And that's why I'm excited about this being Hope for Holistic Health Fertility, Hope for Holistic Fertility, whatever we decide to finally name it.
We'll work on the name as we're
yeah.
It's life.
Isn't that the logo for that? Holistic Hope?
Yeah, a holistic hope. I think that's what we need.
A holistic hope. But that's why I like it, because I think it's easy to get so caught up in, again, the cure. We kind of touched on the cure when we talked about normal and the normal, but a cure, getting to the cure is usually when it's medicine based. That's what happened when you said it's medicine based.
The quick solution, it's something like, this is like cure and like that's it, like doesn't come back, right?
And you also said that it can only be done with medicine.
Yeah, as in the I can't remember which organization or which thing said it, but according to, I believe the AMA, I need to Google this, something based of, if anything is called a cure, it needs to be done with medication. That's the only way it's a cure.
And so what I'm trying to get to, and I don't think I'm doing a good job of getting to this, what I'm trying to get to is that, like how you were saying, someone can focus on doing with all these things for 10 years and it not be the actual cure. But what about the process of, because you can give your body the medicine to cure the physical ailment, but if we're going back to our bodies being energy, and the energy we're allowing to vibrate through our bodies, and if that affects us on a cellular level, we're going to be right back in the position we started in before we got the medicine, because we haven't actually taken care of the issue.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly like what I try to kind of inform my patients. So it's like, in a sense, like subluxation in the body, basically a misalignment of your vertebrae causes a lot of different kind of things that happens, right? And that stress, that subluxation is basically caused by emotional, chemical, physical stress. So no matter how much I adjust someone, like I pay for life, because they're constantly being bombarded with all that stress. So imagine, they're continually being bombarded with that. So when is it actually a cure? It comes back.
It comes back.
Right.
So then that's another challenge idea. How to practice stress relief, resist healing yourself of stress, pushing stress out, because I think it's hard to say healing yourself of stress, because things are going to keep stressing us out. We have no control over life, really. So things are going to happen, and it's all about how we react to it. So just the practice of not causing ourselves additional stress.
Yeah, like more adapting, because I notice the patients that I actually have in regards to chiropractic, they're able to adapt better versus before they get adjusted prior to seeing a chiropractor in general. Because a lot of times is when you take in something, you don't know exactly what to do, so you react. But if you take in something and you're okay to kind of work through it, kind of analyze it, kind of sense, like then you have a better way to how to kind of have a better solution to deal with it, or to mediate it to something else. So it creates less of a tension. So for example, when I mentioned, I think last time we talked how, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but in general, basically when a cell kind of packs up some kind of virus, some kind of bad cell into its own cell to see exactly what it is, what happens is if the cell keeps that bad thing inside and doesn't get it out, then it's going to harm that cell. And that's exactly what they don't want to do. So it's very smart that there's something called apoptosis, the cell destruction on itself, because that's the only way to destroy the thing, right? But what happens is if that cell knows what that thing is that they engulfed and say, oh, actually I've had this before, I know that's bad, I'm going to exit that thing out of me and create something like a trash system in our body, that we have a lot of different systems kind of flow it out, kind of execute it either in our skin, from our skin, or from our feces and certain things like that. That's where the person's healthy, because they know exactly what's going on, take it in, they realize it, and they take it as, okay, that's trash, that's what I don't need to deal with, I'm going to throw it away because it's not beneficial for me.
So that was a beautiful explanation, because then, no, it made me think of surrendering.
Yeah.
It made me think of surrendering, realizing, like, I have to, when you said I have to get rid of this, I have to get rid of this thing that's inside me that's making me feel bad. And usually what is making us feel bad is us trying to, again, control the outcome, the fear we have around something,
Like a resistance, right?
yeah, and when we surrender, we're saying, I don't want that bad feeling, so I'm going to
Let it come and
I'm
do
going
what
to
you need to do, right? It's almost like when people get robbed. It's the bad example. When people get robbed, you can't be like, I mean, despite what happens, but people usually tend to surrender, take what you want, and go, so they don't get harmed.
so that we can be okay, so I can be okay.
Right?
Yeah, I like that. So many good tidbits in here. I'm pulling up the board. It's on my phone.
Let's see what's next on there. I'm gonna leave it to you to edit all these different things. I'm so bad at editing.
No worries. It's fine. I also like listening, because then that's when I can pull the quotes out for the graphics. Did I put the logo in that graphic folder? I saw the quotes there last night. I think I need to add the logo there.
Okay.
And you liked that color?
I think purple's a good color.
You like purple?
Was it purplish?
No, it was a greenish.
Oh, either or. I like what do you call? It's not pastel, but it's more like I don't know how to describe it.
Like a muted kind of tone?
Yeah, I like muted and matted colors.
Muted and matted? Okay.
I do a lot of black, but
okay.
I think the source of your power. I think is that the next one?
Yeah, because we just touched on surrendering a little bit. I feel like Makosi did a good job of that in hers too.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, source of power is the next one. And I guess that is a good lead-in, source of power. This is a good time because we just got through talking about how the environment in which the egg is being cultivated ultimately relies on you and how you choose to respond to external things.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, a long time, something my therapist would say is, TeAirra, you're always giving away your power. Mm-hmm. And I did not know what he meant by that. Like, I think he was saying this to me 4 years ago, and maybe last year was the first time I was like, I told somebody, I'm done giving you my power. And I was like, oh shit, that's what my therapist was talking about.
The surrendering part, right? Because the thing is, it's something to surrender when it's acute, like very like short, like for emergency purposes. But when it's like surrendering for like way too long, then that's giving off, like giving away your power in a sense. It's giving away what you have, like having that boundary,
So talking about the difference in surrendering and giving away, I think that's powerful too.
Yeah.
All right, so how would you like to approach this one?
If you want to continue the topic in regards to pregnancy, And conception wise, it's like surrendering, right? Because a lot of times people need to have control over, they want to have the feel of control, the perspective that they have, they are in control. So a lot of times when that happens, if you can imagine, like, you want to, okay, this was me when I was a little kid. I was like 5, and I think I talked about this with you before, but basically I had a lunchbox, one of those, plastic little, like, Captain Planet, like, it can, like a plastic little yellow lunchbox. I put my crayons in there, and they didn't have no crayons, because, I mean, how much crayons can you actually, like, push all in there, right? So I had like 2 boxes of crayons or something like that. And I was so meticulous, I was so needing of that control, because stuff that happened in my past, that during that time when my parents were yelling in the background, I would put these crayons in a rainbow color. And I know that what happens is, in the back of my mind, that, once you put it all in, Kate, you close it, you lift it up, it's all gonna go everywhere in there in the box. So it's like pointless. For some reason,
anyway,
I needed to do it because it's something that I felt like I had control of to do. Just like when I always, like, made my bed, I would put all these different Happy Meal toys. I would clean it with Lysol, like everything, like every single week, no dust, nothing that's dirty from the outside ever in my room. That was like what I always did. And that's like obsessively control. And if you can think of, like, me talking about it is like me kind of like squishing my body inside, tensing everything up, right? Tensing all my trapezius muscles up, tensing basically my back muscles, everything else like tenses up, right? So if you're so tensed and all these different things, you're actually activating your muscles. That is bringing that tension in to the body, that energy of tension. And the thing is, to conceive all these different things, a lot of people kept saying the secret is to not just surrender, having that safety. And that safety is that relaxation, is that parasympathetic, rest and digest and recover and heal. So that's like the opposite of what that really intense control is, right? So I found that really, really interesting, because a lot of times people want exactly what to do for their body, the X, Y, and Z checklist is good, a guideline is good, but to where you don't have a freedom to it is something else.
I'm letting all that soak in. There's so, like, telling my mind's going a million thoughts.
I'm in the zone right now because I'm in my luteal phase. I'll talk about later. I'm in the zone of like reflective, finishing things, and then kind of like that's the zone I'm in. So I'm very like intuitive feeling as of today, and so we'll talk about that later on in our podcast episodes. But yeah, I'm flowing it. I'm making it flow.
Yeah. Well, and I want to ask for you to go deeper into the effects of holding tension and releasing, what it feels like when you've released the tension. Because I like how you mentioned, like, when you do the release, you're entering into like a healing kind of energy. But with all things, there's balance, you need that tension for some things, and then you need to be in the relax. So can you kind of go over like what is happening in your body within each, and especially in regards to how we were talking about the 120-day period and then pregnancy? Maybe we'll talk about postpartum later in the podcast, because I feel like those first two are
in itself is a whole big thing.
Yeah.
I was like, how am I going to start? This is a big topic. It's going to take me hours of time. But we could definitely cut this up for later on as well.
Yeah, no, I feel like when you explained that just opened like the whole can of worms for so many things. Because I don't think I'm trying to think of like all the women I've talked to about their pregnancies and things like that. And because of the age I got pregnant and my friends got pregnant, we were either not trying to get pregnant, like it was like birth control didn't work kind of thing, or like either birth control didn't work, either we just weren't trying not to conceive kind of thing, like we weren't trying to prevent conception.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the ages, because I had my first baby when I was 22, and I did not plan to have her at 22. I
Mm-hmm.
had just gotten to the point where I was like, if I all these weird things are happening with my body, and I was just at the point where if I got pregnant, then I was having a baby, like I did the grown up deed, so I'm gonna have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about the women I also know in those spaces and the things they were going through in their life, and like now thinking about how the study in Austria and then how our kids are today and just the things we went through. So saying all that to say, I feel like having an understanding of what your body feels like when it is holding tension, because I don't think some of us realize how much tension we're actually holding,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe getting to a point of release and what the healthy balance is between the two.
Yeah, I can talk about the different nervous systems, kind of the easiest way, because people are beginning to talk a bit more about it in regards to sympathetic and parasympathetic. Um, so as you know, sympathetic is that, fight or flight, kind of acutely danger, I should react because the tiger's coming or some kind of emergency thing is coming. So therefore, a lot of blood need to be rushed into our extremities for us to actually go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when that's happening, that's more like an acute thing. It shouldn't be like a long running years on end, like sympathetic overdrive, because that'll just stress you out, right? and when can you actually go on the other side, where parasympathetic, where you can actually rest, digest, and heal, where you're actually having most of that blood rushing back toward the core, to our organs, doing what it needs to do. And so that takes time as well. And so thinking of that 120 days and that tension is, so this is an interesting fact, an interesting introspective kind of thing. So obviously there's 4 different phases in our menstrual cycle. And so you probably didn't know exactly where you were in your menstrual cycle. If I were to predict when you're conceiving during that time, when you're 22, like you kind of knew it, like the time frame of when you're about to have a period, right? But you're exactly like, this is my follicular phase, or this is like my ovulation now. Like, did you know that back then?
The only reason I knew was because, well, I didn't actually know. No, I had an app that I tried to keep up with it because I stopped taking birth control because it was doing weird things to my body.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's so common.
yeah. And so I wasn't, like I said, I didn't want to get pregnant, but so I wanted to be aware of that kind of stuff, but I actually didn't. That's how I ended up pregnant, because my body, I wouldn't have a period for almost 4 months.
Okay.
And so it was really hard to track what was actually going on.
Yeah, they recommend actually for women who don't ovulate or have a regular menses like every single month, to not really use that fertility awareness method, because then it's kind of like everything is kind of like off balance. That's not like predicted as what it is every month. And so that's part of the reason why, and apps are very limited. I love them. I use it in my own just to keep track of like when I am on when I actually ovulate, how long the cycle is. It's helpful for that, but it doesn't tell you exactly like which phase you're in and when you ovulate, when's like the prime time. It does like a range, but it's not like a couple days off of each. So that's the reason why when I suggest for women in regards to, this is a big question, like when are you supposed to have sex? It's like you see all these different movies, you see all these different chemical pregnancies, how people like time their sex, they do the certain things, and it's not a pleasurable thing, right? And so
So stressful.
what was that?
That it sounds so stressful.
I know. So how can you conceive and like create something when you're so stressed? And then you're stressed, you're in that you're in that sympathetic zone of fight or flight. You're not wanting to, supply that blood, supply everything else for you to literally conceive, right? Obviously, it can still happen, but the priority in your body is not there. And so a lot of times when when we ovulate during around those couple of days of about 5 to 7 days or so, that typically for the consistent period women is when they actually feel like they're glowing, like they're happy, they're attractive, and always they're having fun. And then that's when the cervical mucus is really good. That's usually when they're less tense. They have a certain kind of happy hormone everywhere, right? And so that is almost as if you're playing with the right cards. If you were to put it in a certain context, is you're in the right cards to conceive because your body tells you, hormonally too, and spiritually, if you want to add on to that, that you're ready to be attracted, to have fun, and then with your partner, that's when you're fertile. So a lot of times when you're having your period, it's called a fertile void because that's the time for you to actually take your time and your space to actually heal and take a rest. And so when you're ovulating, that's the time when you're actually opening yourself up. You're actually going partying, all these different things. That's usually the time of the month when people tend to want to go out.
I think I remember you saying that, when you're ovulating, you're like, I just want to get dressed up and go hang out because your body's
feels good.
Let's go do some mating rituals.
Exactly. And so that's why it's an ease, right? It's something that where you're actually playing with the right cards. And so a lot of times when people are stressing out, why isn't it happening every month? All these different things, they're timing everything. Sometimes it works for some people because they need a guide, but sometimes it's too much of a control. That's where the balance, the harmony of everything of life kind of interplays, or what's going on is different for each person. And so even though, if you're consistently doing that every single month, right, being stressed out, and then 120 days, there's 30 days in a month, right? That's about 4 months or so, ish or so is when, your egg is actually influenced by your environment. So if you're stressed out all the time, versus if you're actually relaxed, letting your body do its thing, how much tension is there and energy and different hormonal shifts for that egg to form when you're actually wanting or expecting a baby or certain things like
that. This is going to be a fun topic to dive into because I feel like I could just keep drilling and drilling and drilling that topic. But, and I mean, I realized I was just looking back into how I just said, it was about when I was thinking of when I conceived my first and how young I was. But I feel like I can only speak to what I know, so that's why I do that. But even in that, thinking of people who are trying to get pregnant and are probably my age now, I'm approaching 30. And like you said, the sense of control when we're trying to control things, because I'm thinking about see, I can't slow my brain down. I'm thinking about
running out of time almost, right? They're running
out of time. And it's
everything is everywhere. They don't know what to do. So the only thing they can control is wanting this thing that they want. So that they're trying to go towards that goal, the control.
And that can't be good for, like you were saying, having the sympathetic and
sympathetic is the more over. So just humans just say fight or flight. There's a fight or flight, and the rest and digest. So those are different.
I like that. Fight or flight, rest and digest.
Yeah.
Because you never, if you're trying to control, because I know when with us for our second baby, okay, I should be ovulating this week. That means we need to sex all this week. And then I'm going to track to see if my period's going to come. And I never got into a rest and digest phase, because even when my period would come, I was very emotional and upset and feeling like I did something wrong to not have conceived. You know, like,
yeah,
I'm healthy, I'm healthy and I should be able to have a baby kind of
and
thing.
you think this is something wrong with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I broken? Like, why isn't it happening? Then you question yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Broken? Because why are the other people conceiving and having their babies and they're whatever age, the same thing as you? They're like doing certain things similar to you. Like, why isn't it happening? What's wrong with me?
Right. So I feel like that just speaks very powerfully to the importance of us caring for our whole self. Like, I like to talk about that, like our mind, our body, and our soul, but especially, and with soul, you could tie it to your emotions if you want, like if you're not a very spiritual person. But like, I think you've presented a lot of evidence to make a strong case for why it is important that we don't just focus on the physical aspect of conceiving. There are other things that tie into it. And I feel like I'm going back to a previous point instead of focusing on the source of your power.
All good. Go on a tangent sometimes,
right.
The way it goes, which is awesome in itself.
So how would you recommend? Well, first of all, we need to get women to a point to where they recognize that they are the source of their power, that it doesn't come from the app, it doesn't come from the doctor, it doesn't come from
external.
Any external circumstances. So especially in your practice, what are ways have you seen women be able to bridge that gap of seeking from external sources and finally going within?
So in that aspect, it's not like a one time I can explain it to like in like 15-minute kind of thing. It's yes, I can still, but it's a lot of times is their mindset. If they have a certain expectation of what and how to conceive, and that framework is not expected a certain way, then they go somewhere else, right? They want something that's more tangible of like X, Y, and X plus Z, like for Legos, right? If I put this Lego and that Lego together, it makes this because I want it like this, right? If I do this kind of sex with, if I want a certain kind of sex, like a boy or girl, I'm gonna do this and this to put it together. The thing is, I would want to tell you that you could. Obviously, there's science that shows, and there's like, case studies that shows that you can, but kind of challenge the idea of the art behind it, right? There is not a X plus Y always equals Z, because there's so many different things that are happening outside of us. And then we can constantly, like Makosi kind of mentioned, we constantly need that outside source of trying to fill ourselves, thinking that, we're not enough. Therefore, we take, loads of other things that other people recommend us, but in deep within us, we're not aware of what's going on. So then we get taken away from that power. We give that power to someone else of how we should determine our lives and how we live our lives. And so that power is being taken away if you kind of think of the abstract perspective wise. And so then it's like the concept of I help them realize, because I never like tell anyone ever what to do. Sometimes it may seem like it, but I don't ever like to tell people what to do. I try to bring in the information so they can kind of conclude that themselves. So, for example, in regards to the power, if they knew that they have that everlasting, that unlimited power that's inside of them, the potential. Because the thing is, every day we wake up, we do our thing, we do our work, we take care of the kids, we cook, we clean, and then we eat, and then we do it all over again. Where's that power coming from? Is that power coming from the sun? Is that power coming from, where we sleep, like certain things around us, our our bed, like where exactly is it coming from? If you think of that concept, it's coming from us. It's coming from us having our necessities met, and then we go on from that, having that unlimited power source. So that's why I thought this is very clever, though. Where chiropractors usually tend to have very clever names in their practices. So one of the practices in the area is called the source, and so it's like an ever-ending source of power and potential and energy that's coming literally from within us. Because for a chiropractor, for example, I don't give you something and then tell you, okay, you're better, or supplements, that's all you need. That's not what I do. I actually assess what's going on within your body, have your body be aware of that, adjust it so it can actually communicate better, because your brain, your body is that source of power where you just gotta allow it to align and feed and the continuous source of what's going on in life.
And that's awesome. That's I love hearing the chiropractic version of that, aligning everything so your body can speak to itself better. Mm-hmm. Because in Reiki, that's what you're taught to do. Because in Reiki, you're exchanging energy pretty much. Mm-hmm. And it's said that if you are exchanging energy with someone whose energy is less than yours, mm-hmm. then you will end up having your energy depleted because you just gave your energy to the receiver, mm-hmm. the recipient. But how to avoid having your energy depleted, especially for someone who may be a Reiki healer, so they're doing this often for people, they have to learn how to have an overflow of the energy so that they don't run out and they don't end up feeling depleted and healing other people. Mm-hmm. And one of the techniques that are used for this is imagining that you are pulling the energy from the earth so that you're grounded in the earth, and it's pulling up through your body. And then also imagining that you're pulling it down from the heavens and they're filling you, so that you're getting it from both areas and you can give freely because you've made sure that you have an endless supply of energy. Your energy is not going to be depleted just because you give some to someone else. Yeah. So that's awesome. What I thought of. Isn't it awesome?
And that plugged into the earth. You're plugged into the heavens. Yes.
And the heavens. Yeah. And so you have an endless source. Mm-hmm. And then it goes back to how you just said, it's a mindset thing, because you can think to yourself, oh, my energy is so precious, I can't give it away or I'm going to be depleted. And so you shut yourself down, which really isn't aligned to how we are as humans. Humans, we take care of each other. That's what we've always done, going back to caveman days. Like, we care for one another. We each had our role we played, and that's how we've survived so long as a race. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're moving away from that a little now, but that's a topic for another day. But that is how we've survived for so long. And but when you go to recognize that you have an abundance to pull from and to also offer not just others, but even yourself, it's like back to the mindset thing. You don't ever have to, it's a choice when it comes down to it. And sometimes I feel bad saying this because I know some people may not be able to see this perspective. I used to feel this way too. I used to get so frustrated when people would tell me it was a choice to feel that I wasn't enough, or to feel like I didn't have enough, or that I wouldn't be enough for other people. Mm-hmm. Because at the time I didn't see it, but now I do see it as just as easily as I can say, oh, I won't be good enough until this happens, or, until XYZ or whatever. I can just as easily say, I'm good enough as I am, and I'll just get better over time, mm-hmm. Or even if I don't get better, I'm fine with who I am right now.
because things happen for a reason. It's not happening to us, it's happening for us.
Exactly. So yeah, I think again, another powerful little mindset challenge there. Just listing out, that's something I like to do. I like to list out my areas of abundance.
It's awesome.
When I'm feeling really down, when I'm feeling like my energy isn't flowing or I'm not connected with myself, I start listing out my areas of abundance. They usually start from within me too, I've noticed, because I say I'm abundant in kindness, I'm abundant in grace, I'm abundant in love, and then slowly you'll start going externally. I'm abundant in friendship, I'm abundant in security, like have a roof over my head, there's always food in my refrigerator, things like that. And that's the shift. That's another shift, it's a whole other shift. I've gone from feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not enough, things are falling apart, to wait, actually everything's okay. Things are better than okay if I really think about it.
Yeah, like gratitude and abundance, but you don't realize it's there. But if you actually really think about it, it's always been there.
It's always been there. So